What's up, guys? Neil Orfield here, and I'm going to show you how I'll be setting up my fantasy cruncher for the Super Bowl. I'll be setting up here for the largest field GPP on DraftKings. While you're coming in, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification button so you can get alerts when our shows go live. All right, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rearrange my columns. I've got a quick view saved with my columns how I want them so I can see in the middle of my screen ownership projection, my projection, my exposure cap, and then how much I get of players once I have run a crunch. Next thing I'm going to do is sort by projection and just remove anybody who has a projection of 0 so that they won't waste my time when I am working on groups. These players won't show up there, so I don't have to, make much effort to find the players who are going to be included in my groups. So saving some time there. All right. And then the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to this captain tab. I'm going to set a cap on captains at 20%. Again, not a magic number. If you want to play, 100% Jalen Hurts, if you want to play 100% Patrick Mahomes captain, have at it. 20% is just going to spread out my exposure to different captains as I'm setting up here for a 150 set, because I think there are a lot of viable captains here. Next, I'm going to go into advanced options. I'll be working in two tabs here, the general tab and the groups tab. Starting here in the general tab, unique players per lineup, I'm going to leave at 1. Again, I'm setting up for a 150 set. If I were to make 40 or fewer lineups, I think I would recommend changing this to 2 unique players per lineup for the sake of diversifying your lineup set. Team salary, I'm not going to set a minimum. I will set a maximum. I think in this contest in particular, it's going to be such a large contest that any lineup that uses $50,000 of salary and uses any player who's like a legitimate, like has a chance to score points is going to be duplicated a lot. So I think it's really important here to leave some salary on the table. So I'm going to go ahead and set my salary cap here at $49,000. So I'm leaving $1,000 on the table. I think that's going to avoid most of the really highly duplicated lineups. And of course, the reason I do this is because if I'm lucky enough to win, I want to win a lot of money. I don't want to be duplicated much. I'd rather be duplicated, obviously not at all ideally, but typically I'm shooting for, probably in this contest, you're just shooting for duplicates under like 50 or so. You just want to keep it a reasonable number. So leaving some salary on the table is going to help you do that so that you can win more money. You don't have to split so many ways when you win. Offense players versus defense, the default is set to a max of 2 players. I'm going to change that to 5. So I could theoretically have 5 players from one team against just the defense of the opposing team. Not something that's likely to come up very much here, particularly in this game, because there are so many great offensive players in this game. But I want to at least allow for it if it projects well enough to have, 5 Eagles players and the Chiefs defense, or, the inverse of that as well. I think I'd like to at least allow for it in my lineup set. Randomness, I am going to, exposure cap, 100%. I'm going to leave it at 100%. I already changed it in the captain spot specifically, but for util, I'm going to leave it at 100%. Randomness, I am going to set at 30%. This, gives up some control. The more control you want over your lineups, the lower you should set your randomness, or you could turn off your randomness completely if you want complete control over your lineups. Minimum projection included in calculation, the default is set to 3. I'm going to leave that at 3, at least for now. Sometimes I lower that. I'm going to leave it at 3 for now, and I am going to, if there's any players I want in my player pool, I'm just going to give a boost to their projection to get it above that 3 threshold. And then players from each team max, the default is set to 5. I'm going to leave it at 5 so I can have 5 players from one team against just 1 player from the opposing team. You know what I did immediately the first time I won 6 figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, which was awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news, you can get access to these same tools without winning 6 figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $120 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all of that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, You win the bet, you get your money. If you lose the bet, though, you still get your money back in site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure to use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB or we won't be able to track you. All right, so that's it for the general tab. Now I'm going to move to the groups tab, and I'm going to make some groups surrounding my quarterbacks here as usual. So starting with Jalen Hurts at captain, I'm going to make Jalen Hurts a captain my key player. So that's what this group is going to be. I'm going to name it my Hurts captain group. Okay. So I put Hurts at captain as the key player. Now I'm going to sort by position and add all of these Eagles receivers to a secondary group, starting with Zach Pascal, A.J. Brown, Quez, Devontae, Dallas, Stoll, Grant Calcaterra. And I don't really think you need to add the running backs here, particularly because of the way I'm setting up this group. I don't give a huge boost to the running backs in lineups that have Jalen Hurts. So I think I'm going to actually leave the running backs out of the group. So part of the reason is for Jalen Hurts, I am actually going to click this only apply plus minus adjustments button, which means I'm not forcing in any receivers in lineups that have Jalen Hurts a captain, just because he is a good enough runner. He's rushed for more than 50 yards per game this year. He added, I believe, 13 rushing touchdowns in 15 games. He clearly can get there without bringing along any receivers. And that's not something a lot of the field is actually going to play. People are still inclined to stack up their quarterbacks, including Jalen Hurts. And typically, more often than not, my Jalen Hurts lineups, I do want to have at least one Eagles pass catcher in the flex. I'm just not forcing it in a 150 set. You could consider it in like a 40 lineup set or fewer. Maybe I'd consider requiring one, but in a 150 set for Jalen Hurts, you definitely don't need to. And I might not be inclined to force it in either way. But I am also going to make it more likely that I do get to one or more receivers from the Eagles in my Jalen Hurts captain lineups by giving these boosts. So I'm not forcing it. Maybe in some lineups in a 150 set, I won't get any of these players, but I do want to give boost to them anyway to make it more likely that I get some Eagles pass catchers in there when I've got Hurts at captain. Next, I'm going to make a Mahomes captain group. So I'm going to go find Patrick Mahomes in the captain spot, make him my key player, and then same thing. Now I'm going to be adding the Chiefs pass catchers to the secondary group. And there are a lot of them. And I think with the Chiefs, I am going to include the running backs as well. All right, so with Patrick Mahomes, clearly not the same level of runner as Jalen Hurts. I think he rushed for maybe 4 touchdowns this year. He's had off and on with his rushing, and he also has that high ankle sprain, which gives me a little bit of pause. I'm a little bit concerned that he maybe is not going to rush a ton. In the conference championship game, he rushed 3 times for 8 yards, so a little bit on the low end of the spectrum for Mahomes. Oftentimes, you'll see quarterbacks are more willing to run in the playoffs, but I'm not sure if that's going to be the case with Mahomes with the injury. So really hard to predict here how mobile Mahomes is going to be, how often he's going to be taking off. So I still think he has enough rushing upside, and he of course always has the upside to just score a 2-yard rushing touchdown, that kind of thing. Like he can, as I say, he scored 4, I believe, rushing touchdowns this year. He's got that in his bag of tricks. So I think with Mahomes, I am going to require one pass catcher. I'm not going to require multiple. I'm just going to leave it just as is down here. But then I am also going to give these boosts as well to make it more likely that I get to multiple. Because in general, if you're hand building one lineup, you put Mahomes as captain, I would suggest having multiple Chiefs pass catchers in the flex in a 150 set. I'm not forcing multiple, but I am giving these boosts to make it more likely that I get to multiple. All right, so that will do it for the Mahomes lineup. And again, if you haven't watched these videos, I'll give you the quick explanation, which is quarterbacks are outscored by the receivers on every passing play. The receiver scores a point per reception. They score more for the yardage. They score more on touchdowns. So on every single passing play, the pass catcher is outscoring the quarterback. So if the quarterback is throwing too much to one receiver, it's pretty likely that that receiver is going to outscore them, and then that receiver will be the optimal captain instead of the quarterback. So in general, if you've got the quarterback a captain, you want to be playing multiple pass catchers in the flex under the assumption that the quarterback, is obviously they're going to need to put up a lot of points to be the optimal captain, and they can't do too much of that damage with just one receiver. They need to be spreading the ball around so that that receiver doesn't become the optimal captain. So that's the reasoning for why you typically want multiple receivers when you've got the quarterback and captain, unless, like in the case of Hurts, the quarterback can do a lot of their damage on the ground. Obviously on the rushing plays, the quarterback is not being outscored by the receiver. So it's more viable to have the quarterback naked in the captain spot or with fewer pass catchers if they pick up a lot of their points on the ground. And of course, as always, weird things can happen. They throw to an offensive lineman. The offensive lineman scores a touchdown. He's not in the player pool on DraftKings. That's that's not hurting you in any way to not have that lineman. So there are ways for the quarterback to pick up points without receivers. But typically, if a quarterback is scoring a lot of fantasy points, they're bringing along a pass catcher who's scoring a lot of fantasy points as well. All right, so that's going to do it for these two groups. Now I'm going to add a Mahomes flex group. I'm going to think about whether I want to do, I don't think I'm even going to do a Hurts flex group, but I'll do a Mahomes. So finding Patrick Mahomes in the flex, make him my key player. And then once again, add all of these Chiefs pass catchers to the secondary group. Including the running backs. And now, because I've got Mahomes in the flex, I can also include all of these Chiefs pass catchers in the captain spot. There are a lot of them. Okay, good. Think I've got them covered. Okay, so now that's all I'm going to do for this group. I'm not going to give any boost or anything. All I'm saying is if I've got Mahomes in the flex spot, I want to bring along at least one Chiefs pass catcher somewhere else in the lineup again, just because it's pretty unlikely that Mahomes picks up enough points to be in the flex without some pass catcher on the team also picking up a good number of fantasy points. It can happen. It's certainly possible, but you can only make up to 150 lineups. So typically you're trying to make lineups that, cover the more likely scenarios, and more likely than not, if Mahomes is optimal in the flex, he's bringing along a pass catcher from the Chiefs as well. So I think that's going to do it for all of my groups. Save that. And now I'm going to go ahead and crunch out 150 lineups using my projections, which are these Stokastic projections right now. All right, so now the last part of my process involves two things primarily. I'm looking at the lineups themselves to make sure they correlate in ways that I like, and then I'm looking at my player exposures to make sure I'm getting approximately how much I want of each player. So starting with the lineups themselves, first lineup I see here, Mahomes in the captain spot with multiple pass catchers. That is my preference. I'd like to see that most of the time. I've got Mahomes in the captain spot. I'd like to have multiple Chiefs pass catchers there. So that looks good. We've also got Hurts paired with Goddard and Watkins. That looks good as well. Second lineup, we've got Hurts a captain with Brown and Goddard. Love that. Mahomes with Noah Gray, Harrison Butker in there as well. That looks good. Here we've got Dallas Goedert, Hurts, Mahomes with Tony. Yep, we've got a lot of positive correlation here. Devontae Smith also with Hurts. All looks good. Watkins in the captain spot with Hurts in the flex. A.J. Brown in there as well. Patrick Mahomes with Travis Kelce. Looks good. Now here's the first one. We've got Hurts in there without any pass catchers from the Eagles, which again, I intentionally allowed for that. I think it's certainly possible that, just like looking at his averages, Jalen Hurts will put up like 10 fantasy points on the ground. It's certainly plausible that Hurts picks up, 20 fantasy points, gets 10 of them on the ground, gets 10 through the air by throwing one touchdown and a number of yards. So it's certainly plausible for Hurts to be optimal in the flex without bringing along any pass catchers, especially if he's throwing that one touchdown to somebody like A.J. Brown, and all A.J. Brown has is like 4 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown. That's probably not enough at his salary. So certainly plausible to have Hurts in the flex without any pass catchers. Now we do have Kelce here in the captain spot, along with 2 Chiefs pass catchers in the flex. I'm not really that concerned with that. There's, maybe a little bit of negative correlation with a pass catcher from one team and their other pass catchers from the team, just because if Kelsey's the optimal captain, he's probably putting up a lot of fantasy points. Those are fantasy points that he's taken away from, it's less likely that Juju and Noah Gray both had big games, but they're also pretty inexpensive. And, even though there's negative correlation, it's not an impossibility. So I think I'm fine with that lineup. Here we've got Hurts with Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, Mahomes with Juju, looks good. Hurts in the captain with multiple pass catchers. Mahomes with Noah Gray, looks good. Mahomes with 3 pass catchers. Hurts with no pass catchers. Again, I'm fine with that. Yeah, I think that in general, I am okay with these lineups. So here's another one. So we've got Quez Watkins in the captain spot with 3 pass catchers from the Eagles, along with Jalen Hurts. It's getting a little bit thin there, right? Because if Quez Watkins is in the captain spot, he's probably, he's got to score at least like 12 fantasy points probably to be optimal at captain, which probably means he is scoring a touchdown or at least a long play. That's obviously eating into the production of his teammates. So it's a little bit thin to have, Quez there with 3 other Eagles pass catchers. That's a lot of mouths you got to feed for the Eagles. But again, it is plausible in part because Watkins is cheap enough that, you kind of need him there to allow for these guys to be fit in there as well. Of course, I'm leaving a lot of salary too. So who knows what else? Maybe we could fit in Mahomes. We could fit in Mahomes for Travis Kelce. It's a thin lineup, I would say, but I do think that it is, at least plausible. This lineup could potentially win. Hurts with 3 pass catchers looks good. Yeah, I think that these lineups are correlating well enough for me. And then the other thing I do is I look through position by position, look at how much I'm getting of each player. So this first one, yeah, I'm getting to Jalen Hurts in nearly 100% of my lineup, 76% in the flex, and then also 20% here in the captain spot. So Hurts is in almost all of my lineups. He projects well enough. That's not a big surprise. I'll probably cut back. I probably don't want 96% Hurts, but honestly, it's not unreasonable to have that much Jalen Hurts. Mahomes, just 56%. It's probably okay. The running backs, I got literally 0 running backs in my player pool right now. So this is a spot where, I will adjust incrementally projections until I get to exposure levels that I like. So this is a spot where I'm probably going to want more than 0 Miles Sanders, Pacheco, McKinnon, these guys, I'm going to want some. So just starting with Miles Sanders, I'm going to right away, I'm actually going to give him a fairly hefty 2.2 fantasy point boost. That's larger than I usually do to start, but since I'm getting 0, I kind of want to see what that threshold is before I get some. Pacheco is less expensive. I'm going to give him a smaller number here. McKinnon also might still not get any of these guys. We'll see. Gainwell, gonna love him if he is 9.4% owned. I kind of have doubts about this just because of how hot he's been running in the playoffs. Kind of suspect he's going to get more ownership than we expect, but I'll still want him in my player pool. Boston Scott, yeah, project for 4% ownership. I'll definitely have interest in Boston Scott if he is 4% owned. He's a guy that, he vultures touchdowns semi-regularly. So he's certainly live to vulture a touchdown. I'm going to want some Boston Scott in there. So I'm going to give him a projection, a decent projection there. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I think, is just a total wild card. I don't, I've heard a number of people say they don't think he's going to get a single carry. I think that's certainly a possibility. He had been kind of losing favor in Kansas City even before his injury, but I also think they've been using Clyde Edwards-Helaire probably long past when they should have made a switch. So I do think they still kind of like him. At least I think there's a pretty good likelihood, maybe it's 50-50 that he gets a handful of carries here, and certainly could get a goal line carry. So I think I'm going to want him at least in my player pool. Wide receivers. Okay, so I'm getting to 25% AJ Brown, 26% Devontae Smith. That seems close enough to fine. MVS, yeah, he's projected for only 16% ownership. He did have his first really big game of the season in the conference championships. Wouldn't surprise me if he picks up a little bit more ownership. I'm gonna at least get him into the player pool. As you can see here, I'm still projecting him worse than Juju Smith-Schuster, so I'm probably not going to get a ton of MVS. We'll see where it comes out because he's more expensive than Juju. Kadarius Toney, yeah, 17% seems about fine. Sky Moore, gets a couple targets a game generally. He's only 3,800 at 4.4% ownership. I definitely have interest, so I'm going to give him a little boost. Justin Watson, a guy that always interests me on showdown slates. He generally runs routes on more than 40% of passing plays for the Chiefs. Of course, now they have almost all of their receivers healthy. No McCall Hardman, but most of their receivers fairly healthy. But at 4.4% ownership, I'll definitely have some interest. Sorry, at 8.7% ownership, I'll definitely have some interest in Justin Watson. He's just not a name that people are excited to click, and I think he runs enough routes and he's on a good enough offense that I want some there. Quez, yeah, I'm getting 34%. That seems like quite a bit of Quez. Zach Pascal has actually seemed to eat into Quez's playing time a little bit. Zach Pascal has been running routes on like 30% of plays in the playoffs. He's been seeing kind of an uptick in the playoffs, whereas Quez has played a little bit under his season averages in terms of route participation. So I'm kind of interested in Zach Pascal at 7% ownership, just as a guy who he's likely to be on the field running routes, not a ton, but maybe 30% of plays, and that might be enough to just have one big play and pay off that salary. So gonna get him in the player pool. 61% Travis Kelce seems like quite a lot. I'm not going to make any adjustments there. I think there's a good chance that number goes down as I make other adjustments. Dallas Goedert, 48%. Yeah, also seems high. He projects really well for his price tag. So great point per dollar play. Makes sense. I'm getting a lot. Noah Gray has been very involved in this Chiefs offense. At least he's running a lot of routes. He's on the field plenty. 10% ownership seems fair on Noah Gray. Always live to score a touchdown. So I think that he's fine. I don't know that I'm going to want any Jack Stoll, Grant Calcaterra. Maybe at these low ownerships, maybe you got to consider them. For now, I'm going to leave them out, but I think that they're plays you could at least consider in a 150 set. I'm probably not playing them in my first 20, 30 lineups. You know what I did immediately the first time I won six figures in a DFS contest? I converted my trial membership to Stokastic, which was awesome at the time, to a full annual subscription. That's because I knew these were the best tools in the industry. That was 2019, and they've gotten even better since then. Well, good news. You can get access to these same tools without winning six figures first with a great offer from BetMGM. You can get a free month of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up, deposit, and bet at least $10. That's every tool on the site for every sport other than Fantasy Cruncher, a $120 value. All you need to do is click the link in the description of this video, follow the steps, and deposit $10 or more and place a bet of $10 or more on whatever you want. And when that bet settles, MGM will hit you up with how to get your subscription to Stokastic. You don't even need to win the bet. On top of all of that, you also get bet insurance on your first bet up to $1,000. That means if you win the bet, you get your money. If you lose the bet, though, you still get your money back in site credits. It's a great deal from BetMGM and a long trial subscription to the best DFS tools out there. The legal age for gambling in most states is 21 plus, and if you or someone you know has a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Reminder, make sure to use the link or use promo code PLATINUMSUB or we won't be able to track you. Jody Fortson, I think I'd have more interest than Stoll and Calcaterra just because he's on the Chiefs. We've seen him have a little bit of success before. But we'll see what happens. I'm going to give him a projection of 3, get him in the player pool. I am concerned with the projection of 3 at 200. I might get a ton, but we'll have to wait and see. The kickers, getting a good amount. Not going to make any adjustments there. Going to see where they come out. And then the defenses, also not getting a ton of the Chiefs. I'm going to give them a little boost here. I'm going to leave the Eagles where they are. Yeah, we'll see how it comes out. Yeah, as expected, getting a ton of Jody Fortson. So this is where I might go back if I'm getting to 28% Jody Fortson. I gave him the minimum projection that is currently included in my player pool. I think I'm just going to go into advanced options, lower this number down to 2 so that I can lower Jody Fortson's projection and still get him in the player pool. So I'm going to lower this to 2.4. You can see my kicker exposures came down pretty significantly. Who am I getting a lot of? So definitely Jody Fortson. Yeah, I don't know that I want 19% Zach Pascal, so maybe I'll lower that a bit too. Move up my Justin Watson a little bit. This is all I'm doing. I'm just making incremental adjustments until I get to exposure levels that I like. I'm just going to run another crunch right away now after the Forts and before I actually go through all of them like I usually do. Okay, so still getting a good amount of Forts in. All right, so now what I do is I go through position by position, looking at all the different player exposures that I'm getting, and then making decisions. Do I want more? Do I want less? Getting to almost 100% Jalen Hurts, 70% Patrick Mahomes. Don't usually complain about getting too much quarterbacks. That seems fine. Running back still not getting much. I'm going to, again, give relatively large boosts here. See if I get these guys into my player pool. Austin Scott, I'll give a decent boost. CEH probably don't want 19%. I'll lower that slightly. Wide receiver. Yeah, so now I'm thinking if I'm getting 19% AJ Brown to 64% Travis Kelce, I think I'd rather get a little bit more AJ Brown. Maybe bring down my Kelce a little bit. So I'm going to give him a little boost. Same thing with Devontae Smith. Bring these guys up. That'll probably negatively impact how much Travis Kelce I'm getting, which, given how much I'm already getting, I think I'm okay with that. 25% Juju seems okay with me. Kadarius Toney, 9%. He's one of those guys. He's not on the field that much, but they just use him a ton when he is on the field. So he's a little bit unpredictable, but 16, 17% feels about right. Kadarius Toney. I don't think I'm taking any huge stands there. Yeah, I'm going to give another little boost here. All right, I think I'm closer to, and this will probably come down because of the other adjustments I've made. We'll see. Fortson, I'm going to bring down 2. I think I'm okay with these. Kickers, 9% on Jake Elliott feels a little bit low. Maybe I'll give him just a little bit of a boost. Chris slightly. Not sure how much I'm going to want of these defenses. Maybe I'll give them just a little bit of a boost to kind of keep them in line with where they are now. I'll crunch again. And the reason I say I have to give them a boost to keep them in line with where they are now, it's because I'm giving boost to all these other players and all projections are relative. So, as I'm giving boost to my kickers, my, low end, my inexpensive wide receivers, essentially I am lowering the projection of the defense relative to those. So I had to give just a tiny bit of a boost here to keep them close to where they had been if I'm happy with that number. So yeah, looking 8% Eagles, 5.3% Chiefs. Okay, so still getting a decent amount of Butker, not much Shake Elliott. So maybe I'd give him a slight boost. Tight ends, and as you can see, I'm getting closer to where I think I want to be. I still don't think I want 12% Fortson. I'll lower that. I think that Noah Gray, 12%. It might be okay even getting higher than that. These guys still getting a lot of Kelce and Goddard. Maybe I can even it out a little bit more, giving a slightly bigger boost to Brown and Smith. More than 3% MVS. Juju. I think I am going to like Juju better than MVS. At these ownerships, it's not a huge difference there, but I could see MVS being a little higher and Juju being a little bit lower than we anticipate just because Juju has not been great lately. Kadarius Toney, I'll bring him up slightly. Sky Moore, honestly, don't want to get too much more than 4%. I do want to have some shares in there. I'll bring him up slightly. Justin Watson is a guy that I am going to like at 9% ownership. I think I'm getting close to where I think I want to be. Can bring down CEH a little bit more, I think. Don't want a ton, just some. At 3% ownership, honestly, I wouldn't hate having this much over the field of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, but I think I'm going to aim for just a little bit lower. I like this number on Boston Scott. 4% ownership is just really appealing to me on Boston Scott. I think that he is always live to score a touchdown, so I don't hate getting a ton there. Bring up my Gainwell a bit. Got my McKinnon a bit. Pacheco. And Sanders is definitely one that I want more than I can give the field that 14%. Miles Sanders against this Chiefs defense, I think I'm probably going to want to be above the field. So I just gave a kind of hefty boost there. All right, I'm actually going to bring down my Hertz just a little bit too. Try this again. So this is going to be I think this is the final crunch I'm going to do just because sometimes I crunch 20, 30 times. I'm not going to do that on this video. It'd be a very long video. So I'm just going to show you one more time. Okay, I think, it's a fine amount of the quarterbacks. Maybe I bring down Hertz even a little bit more. Backs. Okay, I'm getting closer to where I want to be with Sanders, 18%. Maybe I want slightly more than that, so I'd give him slightly bigger boost. I definitely want more than 3% and 7% Pacheco McKinnon. So definitely going to bring these guys up as well. Kenneth Gainwell probably want more. I mean, if he's at 9.4%, I definitely want more than 2%. I don't really know that he's going to be that low, but we'll see. Boston Scott, I definitely want to be above the field fairly significantly here. So I'm going to a little boost. And then Crowder if I'm double the field, I think that seems fine. If I'm at 6%, field's at 3%. Okay, we're getting a little bit more Brown and Smith. That looks good. Happier with this MVS number. Juju, I think I'd rather have more than MVS. Kadarius Toney, yeah, I want to be right close to the field, I think. Sky Moore, if I'm a little bit over the field, I'm happy with that. Justin Watson, I like being more above the field. Watkins here, I'm a little bit above the field. Yeah, these all seem close to where I want to be with the wide receivers. Noah Gray, I'm getting to quite a bit. I did make some adjustments to my running back, so unclear how that's going to affect things. A little bit of Jody Fortson looks good. I think I'm getting closer to where I want to be. Honestly, I'm not getting much for the defenses, so maybe I'd give that slight boost. Anyway, it's really trial and error. This is not science. This is a lot more art than science. I'm just going through and making little adjustments until I get closer to exposure levels that I like for different players. And then, of course, making sure the lineups themselves are correlating in ways that I want them to. And if they're not, I'd go back into my groups and change them in the advanced options. But I'm going to leave it here for now, getting closer to where I want to be with my lineups. It'll still be probably several more crunches before I actually get to the exposure levels that I want to be at. But that's all it is. You're just looking at players' projections relative to other players and each other's salaries, looking at those, trying to get to lineups that you like, exposure levels that you like. That is my process. It's pretty simple. Hope you can find some success on Super Bowl Sunday using this or a similar process. Good luck.